Hello heroes and welcome to another holly jolly episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is brought to you in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to help decide what topics get covered on the channel and get your name the special thanks at the end of each episode, you can sign up for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below. To start this week's video, we will be spotlighting several stories featuring everyone's favorite holiday hero, Saint Nick himself, Santa Claus. His first published appearance in the Marvel Universe was in a story called Moment of Glory. This yarn was printed in Strange Tales number 34 in 1955, and stars an unassuming man named Sammy Glenn. Sammy had a reputation for being soft, his generous nature preventing him from getting very far in life. While he was compassionate and intelligent, it seemed as though everyone he grew up with became rich and successful, while Sammy toiled away as a service station attendant. At one point in his life, he embarked on a business venture of his own, but was taken advantage of by an unscrupulous banker and bought out of his own company. Then one day, a wealthy stranger pulled into the garage where Sammy Glenn worked. He informed Sammy that he would be gone for 6 hours and asked him to keep an eye on his expensive car and unlocked luggage. He even tipped $20, which was not insignificant in 1955. However, Sammy came up with a scheme and opened the suitcase to find an expensive outfit that would fit him perfectly. He realized that in the time before the old man came back, he could return to his hometown, pretend to be rich in front of his old neighbors, and return the car before anything was missed. But it seems that not everyone was doing as well as he'd thought, and indeed not all of them were even still alive. The girl he once pursued was married with kids, but her husband's big prospects at his job turned out to be a flop and they struggled to make ends meet. Even the banker who'd once ruined Sammy's business venture was left destitute. With several hours left before needing to return the car, he used his apparent wealth to enter an exclusive club for a quick drink. We'll assume that it wasn't enough to get tipsy. Don't drink and drive, kids. The club is where things seemed to turn around for Sammy Glenn, and he met a beautiful woman who'd taken an interest in him. While he kept the details vague, he explained that he worked in the automobile business but wished to use his education for engineering research. And their conversation was overheard by a business owner who just so happened to need a qualified man for one such position. It seems that Sammy had finally gotten his big break, but he was left wondering how such a massive coincidence could have happened. He might have figured out the answer if he paid closer attention to the date on the calendar. Or, for that matter, if he'd paid closer attention to who the old man really was once he returned for his car. This wasn't the only story in the 1950s to feature Santa, and he also appeared in The Lady Who Believes, presented in Journey into Unknown Worlds number 34 that same year. In this tale, an old woman called Mrs. Miggs insisted that Santa not visit her house that year. You see, she was an adult who still believed in Santa Claus, but now that she was rich, she wanted her gifts to go to someone less fortunate. But while telling this request to a mall Santa, she was overheard by a criminal named Lefty Louie. Deciding to take advantage of the old woman, Lefty put together a Santa suit and broke into her house late on Christmas Eve. But while trying to steal her expensive furs, he came upon another Santa in the house. While the two intruders got into a physical altercation, Mrs. Miggs called the police. As the cops arrived, the other Santa pushed Lefty to them and slipped away. And as he was being taken away, Lefty looked up to see the silhouette of the real Santa Claus against the moonlight. Finally, the following year, Santa appeared in The Man Without a Heart, a story printed in Strange Tales of the Unknown number 2. The protagonist of this tale is a miserly lender named Oliver Gomble. He chastised and hounded his poor debtors and even fired his employee, Ernest Evans, on the day before Christmas. But for several nights leading up to the 25th, Gomble was visited by a man with a white beard who warned him to change his ways. On the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the old man appeared in the miser's house and chastised him for his greedy ways before disappearing again as if by magic. Then, early on Christmas morning, Oliver Gomble went to Ernest Evans' house to retrieve the office keys that he'd forgotten to take from him already. But while there, Ernest's young son, Ned, gave Gomble a makeshift toy boat. While the gift was simple, it was the first Christmas present that Gomble had ever been given. Touched by the gesture, he agreed to rehire Ernest Evans and declared himself a changed man. This of course pleased Santa Claus, who Gomble recognized as the man who'd accosted him for several nights. So if Santa Claus does indeed exist in the Marvel Universe, the question of his origins remains. Well, the truth is that he is also a legendary figure, and aspects of his mythology and history are drawn from a number of different sources. One of the most notable examples, of course, is Saint Nicholas. Born in Lycia in the 3rd or 4th century, Nicholas became the Bishop of Myra, and subsequent legends about his life portrayed him as a kind man who loved children and charity, and was even said to have performed miracles. There are many stories about acts of generosity he supposedly performed in his life, the most famous of which involved 3 poor sisters who could not marry because their nobleman father could not afford to pay their dowries. Nicholas, wanting to give the money in secret, tossed a bag of gold into the nobleman's house for one daughter one night. The following night he tossed a second bag for the second daughter. On the 3rd night, the nobleman kept watch and saw Bishop Nicholas, who climbed onto the house's roof and dropped the 3rd bag of gold down the chimney. From there it landed in a stocking that had been hung by the fireplace to dry. And while Nicholas wished to remain anonymous, word got out and people would thank him when they were given an unexpected gift. 6 centuries after the end of Myra, the Russian Emperor Vladimir heard this and other tales of Bishop Nicholas during a trip to Constantinople. After Nicholas was declared Russia's patron saint, these stories spread to the Laplands, where people employed reindeer to pull their sleighs. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, St. Nicholas became known as Sinterklaas, which inspired the name Santa Claus. In his honor, the anniversary of his death on the 6th of December became a time of giving. However, this became linked to the Christian celebration of Jesus' birth on December 25th, and thus Santa Claus became a Christmas icon. Of course, this doesn't quite explain how Santa went from being a legendary figure inspired by a dead saint to an actual physical entity, but the answer to that is actually pretty simple. You see, the Marvel Universe is a world where stories have weight, belief has power, and legends can come to life. For example, it's been said that godly energy left behind by the sun god Atom after he destroyed most of the demonic elder gods was shaped by the minds of man. This resulted in the creation of divine pantheons like the Norse and Greek gods, as well as satanic demons like Mephisto who were born of mankind's unconscious desires. In other words, both gods and devils are on some level creations of the human mind made real. Now, it's true that there are also examples of those gods and demons appearing before the emergence of modern man, but it's also been said that perhaps tales such as these are powerful enough to echo backwards through time and predate their own creation. Or as Loki once said, maybe some stories are so good, so powerful, so wanted, that the universe believes them. So good that they're magic. So good they come alive. And that, it seems, is how Santa Claus came to exist. Rather than literally being St. Nicholas himself, Santa is a magical being brought to life by spiritual energy and humanity's belief in the legendary figure. And Nicholas wasn't the only figure to contribute to the legend of Santa Claus. In fact, speaking of the gods of Earth, an incident involving the Asgardian All-Father Odin may also have inspired parts of the myth. Hundreds of years ago, a fisherman named Sigurd was caught in a fierce storm while returning home for the midwinter's feast. His wife Sia prayed to Odin, asking the Skyfather to guide her husband home safely. Meanwhile, in the city of Asgard, a troll named Grillak threatened the Golden Realm with a giant asteroid. However, Odin dispatched his son Thor to destroy the space rock, which caused a bright flash in the night sky that guided Sigurd home in the wake of the storm. Meanwhile, Sia spotted a bearded man in her cottage carrying a large sack. But before she could investigate, he disappeared in a flash, leaving behind a large array of meats and gifts. Not long after that, Sigurd returned home and the couple looked up to catch sight of their mysterious benefactor, flying through the sky in a chariot pulled by two horned animals. This was in fact Odin along with his goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. And this isn't the only connection Santa Claus has with the realms of Asgardian cosmology. After taking a wife and building his workshop in the North Pole, Santa recruited a team of elves, many of which are reportedly descended from the light elves of Alfheim. Furthermore, many Christian traditions, including the iconic Christmas tree, originate from pagan religions, including those who worshipped the Asgardian gods. There are in fact many other sources for legends which inspired the magical entity of Santa Claus. For example, before Christianity came to Britain, there was a custom in which a community elder would dress as the fur-wearing Old Winter and visit each house to receive food and drink. It was believed that he carried the spirit of winter within him, and so anyone who was kind and hospitable would be treated kindly by the winter in turn. While the popularity of this tradition wavered over time, with the rise of Christianity, a version of Old Winter became known as Old Father Christmas. There are also some accounts which indicate that Santa Claus and Father Christmas may exist as two distinct entities, albeit with similar magical origins. Other figures which contributed to the Santa Claus myth include Saint Basil the Great in Eastern Orthodox traditions and the German Christ Child, or Christkindl, both of which are associated with the act of gift-giving, and the latter is considered the source for the moniker Kris Kringle. And despite the magical nature of his origins, it's also possible that Santa Claus possesses a mutant X gene. One Christmas Eve, old Saint Nick was detected by the X-Men's mutant tracking computer system Cerebro, and was at the time the most powerful mutant it had ever registered. Now, this could potentially be a misunderstanding, since Cerebro is also demonstrably capable of tracking mystically empowered non-mutants like the Juggernaut, but the X-Men did specifically refer to Santa's signature as a mutant one. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood also wanted to induct the powerful mutant into their ranks. This led to another confrontation between the X-Men and the Brotherhood, but the battle ended when Santa Claus transformed the evil mutants into action figures. He then teleported the X-Men away, erasing their memories of their encounter in the process. And so Santa Claus has a range of magical abilities, not all of which have been fully documented. He is able to alter the size and appearance of both himself and others, allowing him to fit through chimneys and other such openings to gain entrance to people's homes. Despite his physical appearance, he does not actually age, and his strength increases on Christmas Eve, enabling him to lift up to 2 tons. He is also in possession of various supernatural artifacts, perhaps the most notable being his magical sack, which is actually a tesseract containing a pocket dimension with enough room to hold gifts for every child in the world. While often depicted as Caucasian in popular media, when he is seen by people he will typically reflect their own racial characteristics while retaining his white hair and beard. This is similar to how the World Eater Galactus will actually appear different to different alien races. Of course, when it comes to figures like Santa, it can be difficult to separate fact from fiction. However, when a being is spawned from myth and legend, the line between the two grows fuzzier than usual. For example, Captain America once told a story to a group of children about how he, Bucky, Nick Fury, and the Howling Commandos rescued Santa from the Nazis in 1943. While one may wonder how true that story is, it was reported as canon in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. But this wouldn't exactly be Santa's only encounter with Adolf Hitler, as years later a clone of the mad dictator, known as the Hate Monger, threatened New York with a nuclear warhead on Christmas Eve. While the Hate Monger's ships made their way towards the city, Santa's sleigh shot by at astonishing speed, distracting one of the pilots and causing him to crash into the bomb, destroying it and saving New York. While the sun rose on Christmas morning, Nick Fury was left wondering if there really was a Santa Claus. Of course, we now know the truth, and perhaps next year we'll discuss more tales featuring jolly old Saint Nick. That's all I've got for this episode, but next week we'll be back with the last video of the year and the 200th installment of History of the Marvel Universe. In 2023, I'm going to do my best to consistently upload videos that are over 20 minutes in length, so look forward to that as well. There's going to be more heroes, more villains, more ongoing histories, and more looks at tales from before the Marvel Age. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more marvelous content. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page, where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here. So until next time, true believers, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and of course, Excelsior!